Now we are moving to the next module, Towards Tomorrow. This module starts with a couple of lines from the poem Lockley Hall. Lockley Hall is a famous poem written by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Alfred Lord Tennyson was a famous English poet. Lockley Hall is actually an estate near the sea located in England. It is an estate near the sea located in England. In this poem, a soldier asks his comrades to leave him at Lockley Hall. So, a soldier stays in this estate called Lockley Hall. Lockley Hall എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സ്ഥലത്ത് ഒരു soldier താമസിക്കുന്നു. That is what the poem is about. The soldier ponders for a moment about the world and the future. In this poem, the soldier thinks about. Ponders means thinks. He thinks about the world and the future. He is in the midst of a war and he thinks about the world and the future. And he says, "For I dipped into the future, far as human eye could see, saw the vision of the world and all the wonder that could be." So these are the lines given in your textbook. For I dipped into the future. I thought about the future. I thought deeply about the future. Future ne patti njan chindichu. Far as human eye could see. He thought about the future deeply. He saw the vision of the world and all the wonder that could be. So, he could see a vision of the world. He could see a vision about the wonders of the world, the wonders of the future. Maybe he is talking about the advancement of science and technology in the future. ഭാവിയെ പറ്റിയുള്ള ഒരു വിഷനാണ് ഈ സോൾജിയർ കാണുന്നത്. For I dipped into the future, far as human eye could see, saw the vision of the world and all the wonder that could be. Here is an assignment. Name a few modern apps you are familiar with. List a few uses of these apps. You can mention any app. List a few uses of that particular app. Do you think they are really useful? Why? Imagine an app which helps us to communicate with people from other planets. You have to imagine an app that helps you communicate with aliens. What will be its features? So use your imagination. Now let's move on to the first core text. It is a short story called The Watery Place. This short story was written by Isaac Asimov. It is a science fiction short story. What is science fiction or sci-fi? Science fiction is a kind of fiction whose content is imaginative but based in science. It is fiction but it is based in science. കഥ സാങ്കല്പികമാണ് but it is based in science. It is imaginary but it is based in science. It can be about topics like time travel, aliens, space exploration, etc. You must have seen a lot of sci-fi movies, right? You have seen The Planet of the Apes, Avatar, movies about time travel, etc. Journey to the Center of the Earth is a very famous sci-fi novel. It's written by Jules Verne. Another famous sci-fi novel, The Time Machine, written by H.G. Wells, is also a very famous sci-fi novel. These novels have also been made into movies. So sci-fi is an imaginary story based in science. The story is imaginary. It is based in science. The Watery Place is also a sci-fi story. Here's the plot of The Watery Place. A flying saucer lands on April 14, 1956, and two aliens walk into the sheriff's office. That is the plot of the story. A flying saucer comes to a place in USA and two aliens get out of it. Flying saucer is പറക്കുംതളിക. പറക്കുംതളിക വരുന്നു, അതിൽ നിന്ന് രണ്ട് aliens ഇറങ്ങി വരുന്നു. That is the story of The Watery Place. So Isaac Asimov was a Russian-born American writer. He was a scientist and biochemist. He has written many works of science fiction. His most famous work is the Foundation series. He has written essays on a wide variety of scientific subjects. The short story Watery Place was published in 1956 in Satellite Science Fiction. So here is the story. We are never going to have space travel. What is more, no extraterrestrials will ever land on Earth. At least not anymore. I'm not just being a pessimist. As a matter of fact, space travel is possible. Extraterrestrials have landed. I know that. Spaceships are crossing space among a million worlds. But we will never join them. This is because of a silly mistake. So the narrator says that we are never going to have space travel. We are never going to travel in space. No extraterrestrials will ever land on Earth. What is an ET or an extraterrestrial? An ET or extraterrestrial is a being from outer space. A being who resides somewhere outside the Earth. A being from outer space. He says that no extraterrestrial will ever come to Earth. He says he's not just being a pessimist. I'm not just being a pessimist. Pessimist is the opposite of optimist. Who is a pessimist? A pessimist is a person who thinks that bad things are likely to happen. An optimist is a person who thinks that good things are likely to happen. A pessimist is a person who thinks that bad things are likely to happen. It's the opposite of optimist. I'm not just being a pessimist. As a matter of fact, space travel is possible. Extraterrestrials have landed. So the narrator says space travel is real, it is possible. Extraterrestrials are also real. I know that. Spaceships are crossing space among a million worlds. But we'll never join them. So people from other planets are crossing the space among a million worlds. They are crossing the space. They are doing space travel. But we will never join them. Why? This is because of a silly mistake. And that silly mistake is what this story is about. We are going to find out what that silly mistake is. I'll explain. It was actually Bart Cameron's mistake. He is the sheriff at Twin Gulch, USA, and I am his deputy. Bart is an impatient man, especially when he is working on his income tax forms. You see, besides being sheriff, he also owns and runs the general store. He's got some shares in a sheep ranch. He does a bit of assay work. He has got a kind of pension for being a disabled veteran, bad knee, and a few other things like that. Naturally, it makes his tax figures complicated. So it's too bad the flying saucer landed on April 14, 1956, when he was in the middle of filling his tax forms. So who committed that silly mistake? Bart Cameron committed that silly mistake. And who was Bart Cameron? He is the sheriff at Twin Gulch, a place in Idaho, USA. And the narrator is his deputy, his assistant. So Bart Cameron is a sheriff. Who is a sheriff? A sheriff is a law enforcement officer, a chief law enforcement officer. Bart Cameron is a sheriff at Twin Gulch, USA, and the narrator is his deputy. Bart is an impatient man, especially when he is working on his income tax forms. So Bart Cameron is an impatient man. He is a hot-tempered man. ഒരു ക്ഷമയില്ലാത്ത ആളാണ്. Especially when he is working on his income tax. So why is he an impatient man? Because besides being sheriff, he owns and runs the general store. He's got some shares in a sheep ranch. He does a bit of assay work. He has got a kind of pension for being a disabled veteran. So, he is a person who handles several jobs. So, he is the sheriff of this Twin Gulch. He is the sheriff of that particular town. He owns a store. He owns a general store. He has some shares in a sheep ranch. What is a ranch? A ranch is a big farm, a large farm. So, this person owns a sheep ranch, a large farm that breeds sheep. He does a bit of assay work. Assay is the testing of metal to determine its quality. Testing of metal to determine its quality. So the sheriff does a bit of assay work. He tests metal to determine its quality. He was also a disabled veteran. He was in the military. He retired from military because of his bad knee. So the sheriff is a very busy man. Here he is juggling several jobs. He does several jobs. That is why he is very busy and very impatient. And right now he is working on his tax forms, income tax forms. Naturally, it makes his tax figures complicated because he has several jobs. His income tax is quite complicated. So it's too bad the flying saucer landed on April 14, 1956, when he was in the middle of filling his tax forms. So the sheriff was in the middle of filling his tax forms when the aliens landed on Earth. The aliens landed on Earth on April 14, 1956, and at this point of time, the sheriff was filling his income tax form. What is a flying saucer? പറക്കും തളിക. I've given you a picture of a flying saucer. Of course, it is imaginary. I saw it land. It looked like a shooting star at first. Then the line of light looked like a rocket. It came down sweet, steady, and without a sound. Two men got out. I couldn't say anything or do anything. I just sat there. Cameron, he never looked up. So how did the saucer land? The narrator saw the saucer land. He says that it looked like a shooting star at first. Then the line of light looked like a rocket. You must have seen flying saucers in movies. At first it looks like a shooting star or a rocket. It came down sweet, steady, and without a sound. Then it came down steadily without making any sound. Came down silently. Then what happened? Two aliens got out of the flying saucer. Two men got out of the flying saucer. The narrator was surprised. He was shocked. He couldn't do or say anything. He was shocked. He is dumbfounded, shocked. I just sat there. He didn't do anything. He couldn't do anything. He just sat there. What about the Sheriff Cameron? He didn't even notice the flying saucer. Why? Because he was filling his income tax form. There was a knock on the door which wasn't locked. It opened and the two men from the flying saucer stepped in. So what happened? There was a knock at the sheriff's office and two aliens from the flying saucer stepped in. I would have thought they were city fellows if I hadn't seen the flying saucer land. They wore dark suits and black shoes. They had dark complexions, black wavy hair, and brown eyes. They had very serious looks on their faces and were about 5 foot 10 apiece. They looked very much alike. So look at the description of the aliens. They looked very much like human beings. They looked like ordinary human beings. They wore dark suits and black shoes. They had dark complexions. They had black wavy hair, brown eyes. They had serious looks on their faces. They were about 5 feet 10 inches tall. The aliens looked very much alike. See? So they looked very much like ordinary human beings. They did not look like aliens at all. They looked like ordinary human beings. God, I was scared. But Cameron just looked up when the door opened and frowned. He said impatiently, "What can I do for you, Fox?" One of the two stepped forward. He said, "We have watched your place for a long time." He pronounced each word carefully. "We have chosen this locality for our first meeting because it is isolated and peaceful. We know that you are the leader here." "I'm the sheriff, if that's what you mean. So spit it out. What's your trouble?" "We have learnt your language and way of dressing. We even changed our appearances." So the narrator and the sheriff encounter the aliens. The narrator says, "God, I was scared. The narrator was scared. But Cameron just looked up when the door opened and frowned. Cameron wasn't scared at all. He just looked up and frowned. Frowned? നെറ്റി ചുളിക്കുക. Frowned. He said impatiently, "What can I do for you, Fox?" So he thinks that these are ordinary human beings. So he says, "What can I do for you?" One of the aliens stepped forward. He said, "We have watched your people for a long time. We have watched the people of the earth for a long time." He pronounced each word carefully. He speaks very slowly and carefully because English is a foreign language to him. "We had chosen this locality for our first meeting because it is isolated and peaceful." So why has he chosen this particular locality? Because this place is isolated and peaceful. Isolated means far away from other places and buildings and people. A remote place. Isolated, ഒറ്റപ്പെട്ട ഒരു സ്ഥലം. "We know that you are the leader here." So these people think that the sheriff is the leader of this place. That is why they are visiting the sheriff. Sheriff is not actually a leader. He is just a law enforcement officer. But these aliens think that the sheriff is the leader of that place. The sheriff says, "I'm the sheriff, if that's what you mean. So spit it out." Spit it out is to urge someone to say something. പെട്ടെന്ന് പറയുക. So spit it out. "What's your trouble?" He asks, "What's your trouble?" The aliens say, "We have learned your language and way of dressing. We have even changed our appearances." So, the aliens have learned the ways of human beings. They have learned to dress like human beings. They have learned our language. They have even changed their appearances to look like human beings. That is why they look like human beings. So see the first question. Contrast the reaction of the narrator with that of Cameron's when they meet the aliens. The narrator saw the flying saucer land. He saw the aliens get out of the flying saucer. So obviously he was scared. He was scared and he was shocked. What about Cameron? Cameron was doing his income tax forms. He did not notice the aliens land. So he just looked up and frowned at the aliens. And he says impatiently, "What can I do for you?" Why did they choose Twin Gulch to make contact with the earth? Why did they choose this particular place, Twin Gulch? Because the place is isolated and peaceful. They chose the place because it is isolated and peaceful. You could see that Cameron was beginning to understand. He said, "You guys foreigners?" Cameron didn't much like foreigners. The man from the saucer said, "Foreigners? Indeed we are. We come from the watery place your people call Venus." I had seen the flying saucer. I had seen it land. I had to believe this. These men or these somethings came from Venus. But Cameron never blinked an eye. He said, "All right. We all have equal rights regardless of race, creed, color, or nationality. I am at your service. What can I do for you?" So Cameron thought that these guys were foreigners, and he did not like foreigners. He thought that these two men were foreigners, and Cameron did not like foreigners. So he asked them, "Are you foreigners?" And they say, and the man says, "Foreigners? Indeed we are. We come from the watery place you call Venus." He says, "Yes, we are foreigners. We come from the planet Venus, the watery place called Venus." So the narrator has seen these men come out of the flying saucer. He knows that these people are aliens. He actually believes that these people are from Venus. Now, if you take a look at the real Venus, the planet Venus, it is a very hot planet. It doesn't really have any water. It is a really hot planet. I've given you a picture of the real Venus. You can see that it is a very hot planet. It could have been watery and habitable millions of years ago, but right now it is not habitable. It is a very hot planet. But we have to imagine that, for the sake of the story, we have to imagine that Venus is a very watery place. I've given you another picture. Look at that. Imagine that Venus is a very watery place. So what does Cameron do? Cameron never blinked an eye. He says, regardless of race, color, nationality, etc., we all have equal rights. So what can I do for you? He asked them, what can I do for you? Cameron did not see the flying saucer land, so he does not know that these people are aliens. He thinks that they are foreigners. ഒരു aliens ആണെന്ന് കാമറോണിന് അറിയില്ല. He thinks that these people are foreigners. The watery place refers to planet Venus. We would like you to bring the important men of your country here for discussions. We want you to join our great organization. Slowly, Cameron got red. Our people joined your organization? We are already part of the UN and God knows what else. And I suppose I'm to get the president here, right now? Send a hurry-up message? He looked at me with amazement. And Cameron really went to pieces. He banged his income tax form and yelled, "I have no time for foreigners who act too clever. If you don't get out of here right now, I'll lock you up and I'll never let you out." So this is what happened. The alien says, I have to talk to the important men in your country. I have to talk to your president. And the alien also says, we want you to join our great organization. We would like you to bring the important men of your country here for discussions. We want you to join our great organization. So he wants to talk to the president or the other important people in the country. He also wants Earth to join their organization. But what does Cameron do? He gets angry and he shouts at the aliens. He says, "We do not want to join your organization. We are already part of the UN and many organizations. And I am not going to call the president. I am not sending a message to the president." He gets annoyed. He is very much irritated. He looked at me with amazement. And Cameron really went to pieces. He finally broke down. He went to pieces. He banged his income tax form and yelled. He shouted, "I have no time for foreigners who act too clever. I have no time for foreigners who act too clever. If you don't get out of here right now, I'll lock you up and I'll never let you out." He says, If you don't get out of here right now, I will put you in jail. I'll put you in prison. I'll lock you up. So he gets really angry at the aliens. He thinks that these aliens are foreigners, especially because the aliens say they want him to join their organization. He thinks that these are some foreigners, and he completely breaks down and he shouts at them, he yells at them. Now look at the question. Why do you think the sheriff spoke in a rude manner? എന്തുകൊണ്ടാണ് rude mannerൽ സംസാരിക്കുന്നത്? The sheriff was by nature an impatient man, but he was even more impatient and unapproachable that day because he was doing his taxes. Also, the aliens looked perfectly human. They were dressed in ordinary business suits. So he thought that these people were foreigners. He did not know that they were aliens. They wanted the people to join their great organization. This annoyed the sheriff even more. So the sheriff thought that they were foreigners. That is why he spoke to them in a rude manner. You wish us to leave, said the man from Venus. Right now, get the hell out of here and back to wherever you came from. I don't want to see you. The two men looked at each other, making little twitches with their faces. Then the one who had done all the talking said, I can see you wish to be left alone. It is not our way to force ourselves on people who do not want us. We will respect your privacy and leave. We will not return. We will girdle your world in warning, and none will enter, and your people will never have to leave. So Cameron tells the aliens that they have to leave right now. They should not stay here. They have to leave right now. He says, get the hell out of here and back to wherever you came from. I don't want to see you. He tells them to go back. The two men looked at each other, making little twitches with their faces. What is a twitch? A twitch is a short, jerking movement. ഞെട്ടൽ പോലെ ഒരു movement ആണ് twitch. A sudden, jerking movement. Then the one who had done all the talking said, I can see you wish to be left alone. It is not our way to force ourselves on people who do not want us. We will respect your privacy and leave. We will not return. He says, we will not disturb you anymore. We will return to our planet. We will return to Venus. We will girdle your world in warning and none will enter. To girdle is to encircle. A girdle is a kind of belt. To girdle something is to encircle it. ചുറ്റുക. We will girdle your world in warning and none will enter and your people will never have to leave. So we will never enter earth again and people from earth will never have to leave. We are leaving earth forever. We will not return. That is what the alien says. They turned and left, and I just knew that everything they said was true. I was listening to them, you see, which Cameron wasn't, because he was busy thinking of his income tax. And when they left, I got my voice back, too late. I screamed, Cameron, for God's sake, they are from space. Why did you send them away? From space? He stared at me. So now the narrator gets his voice back. Till now he couldn't speak because he was in shock. He was scared, he was afraid, and he was in shock. So he could not speak. Now the narrator got his voice back. So The narrator knows that the aliens were speaking the truth. He knew that they were aliens because he saw their flying saucer. And he also knew that they were speaking the truth. Now he says, Cameron, for God's sake, they are from space. Why did you send them away? He says these people were from space and you have sent them away. Why did you do that? But Cameron did not know that they were from space. He thought that they were foreigners. From space? He stared at me. He is confused. He did not know that they were from space. I yelled, "Look!" and pulled him to the window. When he saw what was going on outside the window, the breath went out of him. Those two men were getting into the flying saucer, and the saucer sat there, large, round, shiny, and powerful. Then it took off like a shooting star, slowly fading out. And I said, "Sheriff, why did you send them away? They had to see the president. Now they'll never come back." So the narrator yelled, "Look!" and pulled him to the window. When he saw what was going on outside the window, the breath went out of him. And finally, the sheriff saw that these two men were actually aliens, not foreigners, they were aliens. When he saw what was going on outside the window, the breath went out of him. That means he was shocked. He was very shocked. ഞെട്ടിപ്പോയി. Those two men were getting into the flying saucer. He saw that these aliens were getting into the flying saucer. And the saucer was a large round object. It looked shiny and powerful. Flying saucer is a parakundaliga. Then it took off like a shooting star, slowly fading out. The flying saucer took off and it went into space, slowly fading out. It looks like a shooting star. And I said, "Sheriff, why did you send them away? They had to see the president." So these aliens had come to see the president, to meet the president. Why did you send them away? Now they will not come back. They are gone forever. So what is the climax of the story? The sheriff Bart Cameron is so concerned and consumed by his income taxes that he doesn't realize the Venusians are alien life forms and believes they are foreigners from Venice, Italy. The Venusians say that the Earth can join the intergalactic government system and express their wish to meet with the President of USA. You can pause the video and look at the answer. Please pause the video and read the answer. However, the hot-headed sheriff tells them to leave and threatens to lock them up for disturbing the peace. The alien can tell that Cameron is serious, so he says that he will leave and see to it that the Earth will never be bothered on the matter again. Thus, humanity will be fenced in on Earth forever. That is the climax of the story. The climax is that the aliens say they will never come back again. They will never bother Earth again. And the Earth can, and the human beings can remain on Earth forever. Please pause the video and read the answer. Cameron said, "I thought they were foreigners and they talked funnily and looked Italian. I thought they were Italian." "How could they be Italian? They said they were from the planet Venus. I heard them. They called it the Watery place or something. You know, Venus has a lot of water on it." But you see, it was just an error, a stupid error, the kind anyone could make. Only now Earth is never going to have space travel or have another Venusian visit us. That fool Cameron and his income tax. Because he whispered, Venus. Venus? When they talked about the watery place, I thought they meant Venice. Venice is a city in Italy, and as you can see in the picture, it is a very watery place. So Cameron said, I thought they were foreigners. They talked funnily and looked Italian. I thought they were Italian. So he thought that these aliens were Italian because they had a strange accent, they talked funnily, and they looked like foreigners. They looked like ordinary human beings, they looked like foreigners. The deputy asked, the narrator asked, how could they be Italian? They said they were from the planet Venus. They called it the watery place. You know, Venus has a lot of water on it. This, they were not foreigners, they were from the planet Venus. Venus is the watery place. It has a lot of water on it. But you see, it was just an error, a stupid error, the kind anyone could make. What was the error? The sheriff thought that these people were foreigners coming from Italy. He thought that they were from Venice, which is a place in Italy. Only now Earth is never going to have space travel or have another Venusian visit us. That fool Cameron and his income tax. All of this happened because Cameron was doing his income tax. He was busy doing his income tax that he did not pay attention to the flying saucer. That is why all of these happened. He whispered, Venus? When they talked about the watery place, I thought they meant Venice. So he mistook Venus for Venice. He thought that they were from Venice. Venice is a place in Italy. See, I've given you a picture of Venice. It is a place with lots of water bodies. It is a very watery place. So എന്താണ് ഇവിടുത്തെ silly mistake? Cameron വിചാരിച്ചത് ഈ aliens foreigners ആണെന്നാണ്. He thought that they were from Venice instead of Venus. That is the silly mistake. Now see the question. Why did the sheriff mistake Venus for Venice? The aliens in the story said the watery place, meaning Venus. Unfortunately, the sheriff thinks the aliens are from Italy. So when they said the watery place, he thought they meant Venice, which is a place in Italy. The words Venus and Venice sound very similar, which is why he mistook Venus for Venice. So here is your second assignment for the day. How credible is the story in your opinion? Give your reasons. Credible means believable. Is this story believable? What are your reasons? I've given you a few hints. Go through them and write your answer. Thank you.